Hello, blood brother. I'm in the car right now. Your nephew Yisrael is driving.
Hi, Yisrael. I hope you're coming back from somewhere holy.
Yep, pretty holy.
We're coming back from the oil right now. It's 1:40 a.m. We're just finishing up Fabrengen over there. And we wanted to check in with you.
Oh, good. Thank you. I'm just finishing up working on a video for Operation 613, Safer Mitzvahs.
What is Operation 613?
That is a good question. It is a daily Sefer HaMitzvahs program for kids. Check it out. It's cool. Right now it's in beta mode, and registration is limited. So I don't know if you go and you try to register right now, you may not be able to do it. So hop around.
So I think this is episode 4 of Blood Brothers.
Yes. Yeah, I think it is.
And so much has changed since the last episode. The world has,
Goodness.
wouldn't you say the world has changed? It's a different world.
Well, when we started, we were doing Zoom. It had already, we were like in lockdown, right? That's when everybody jumped on
Yes,
Zoom.
correct.
But we thought it was going to be like, oh, okay, until Pesach.
We thought it was going to be till Pesach.
Yeah.
And then we thought it was going to be till Shavuos.
Yeah.
And now it's Tishrei.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, the world is different.
So much has changed. Wouldn't you say?
I would say. I've been asking, the question I was asking, well, I stopped asking it, but like a couple of months ago was, are we going to, like, are my kids going to be telling their grandkids about the time that they had to go to school online and or wear masks or whatever? Or are they going to tell them about the time back before you had to do all of that? Like, are they still going to be doing that 40 years from now?
Green light, so. That's a frightening question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't mean to depress our viewers.
Or to frighten them.
Yeah. What do you think's worse, frightening people or depressing people?
Depressing.
Because frightening can at least motivate people?
Because fright is like a stimulus response. It's like almost like neurological. Like, oh, you like snakes, scare people,
Like a cucumber scares a cat.
Yes. Now, it seems that you've Googled why do cucumbers scare cats.
Because
I said snakes, and you went right for cucumbers scaring cats, which means that you have been influenced by the theory that the cats are recognizing the cucumber as a snake.
Yes. Yes. So apparently they can figure out everything else in our modern world, and they can they'd have no problem stepping on your remote control or whatever. But that cucumber, which isn't particularly modern, but I guess the modern cucumber. But they see a cucumber and they immediately think it's a snake.
Cucumber. Could be genetically engineered.
Right. They're not used to it. The smell, the scent is different. And they think that thing's a snake.
They think it's a snake and they jump. Now the question is, would they jump from a zucchini squash? Has that been tested? And if not, do you think I could get 10 million views on YouTube? Because I want to tell you, my Kinder Egg unboxing videos have 100 million views.
Say that again?
I have a side hustle where I post Kinder Egg unboxing videos, and I get ad revenue. I have about 100 million views.
Right. So that's what your real income. The rabbi stuff is just a passion project.
In Kamach in Torah.
Yeah.
And in Torah in Kamach.
That's right.
Would you consider our conversation Kamach or Torah?
Are those the only two options?
Yes.
Well, it's not Kemach, because Kemach is a responsibility. That's something that you're doing because you have to do it. It's a means to an end. And this is something that we're doing because it brings us joy.
And we believe it brings other people joy.
Yeah.
Can I talk about that for a second? We initially made these Zoom things just for fun to see. We threw it out there. We saw would anybody respond to it. And I want to tell you, of all the things I've put out in the past half a year, this thing, the podcast between you and me, has gotten the most exuberant response.
That's wonderful.
So I think
I'm
that
very
says
happy
something.
about that.
I think it says something.
What does it say?
People they like the format, the conversation.
Yeah. I haven't seen a lot of, like, I mean, I'm not a big podcast guy, but I haven't heard a lot of podcasts. It's just people sharing ideas, Jewish ideas.
Jewish ideas, probably not. No,
it exists with lots of other stuff, but
yeah,
that's like the primary format for podcasts.
Yeah, but not Jewish ideas.
Yeah. So hopefully we're providing something that is appreciated. All right, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
A Sukkah's question.
Yeah.
All right. My question for you, and I've asked this question to lots of people, and nobody wants to take me seriously. My question is:
you get pulled over there? I don't know.
You're getting pulled over?
Could be.
All right. Well, let's keep this recording just in case they racial profile you.
Well,
he's shining the light.
I don't know. Anyway, you had a Sukkah question before Yisrael got pulled over, which we're going to cut out. Okay.
Yeah.
You had a Sukkah question.
You should leave it in there, by the way.
All right. I have a question for you. I have a Sukkah's question for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you ready? All right.
Yeah.
So this is a question I've asked a lot of people, and nobody wants to take it seriously. My question is, if you were to shrink a person, a human being, with a shrink ray, and shrink him down to the size of like a toothbrush, what size sukkah would he need to eat in?
Wow.
That's my question for you.
What is the regular shear for a sukkah?
It has to be. Are you quizzing me?
Not quizzing. Not trying to put you on the spot, but you brought it up, so I figured maybe you would.
So it's 7 tefachim by 7 tefachim.
How tall is it?
10 maybe.
I'll tell you what. It's not more than 20 amas.
I know that.
You know why? It's a couple things. The very beginning of sukkah, but you don't see it up there, which is like why the Hanukkah Menorah also can't be up there, because then it's not Pirsim Nisa, because people don't look that high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's another reason too, right?
Because of shade.
Well, because then the walls will start casting the shade. You'll
right.
Sitting
you
in
get
the
the
shade
from the walls, not from the schach.
Right. It's like when you're in the city, and all the skyscrapers make it dark.
That's right. Yeah, they call that Manhattan Shkia.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard that term before.
I made it up just now.
Yeah. So what do you think? If a regular sukkah is whatever the dimensions are, and it's based on the size of a person that they should be able to fit in it.
Yeah.
Right? Instead, a single person should be able to fit most of himself in there. If the person is tiny, could he sit in a tiny sukkah, or does he still need to sit? Is that shear now set because for everybody or whatever?
That's a great question.
There's actually a question in the Gemara about Yom Kippur.
Egg Melech HaBashan.
Right, exactly. So it asks the question of if a giant has to have the same shear to eat on Yom Kippur, to be considered eating on Yom Kippur, or if it's different for a giant. And the maskana there, the Gemara. So I forget which Amora it was that asked the question and said, "Hey, well, how is the shear the same for everybody? Shouldn't it be different for a Melech HaBashan?" And then the answer is no, because we know that this is the shear. We have the Masorah that this is a shear that settles the das of a person, and it doesn't matter how big they are. It's just that for a regular person, it'll settle their mind a lot, and for a giant, it would settle their mind less, but it would still do it. It still accomplishes that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you want to ask about eating on Yom Kippur and giant, but there's two differences there. One, that's about food, and it's about something that you're ingesting, and so that, as opposed to a sukkah, which is something that's around you. That's one difference I can think of.
Yeah.
And another difference is the oig is a giant, like that's his size, and a person who shrunk down is still a regular sized person who shrunk down. Maybe that might make a difference.
Okay.
These are boring questions, aren't they?
No, I'm enthralled. Okay. So, where were you going with the difference between eating, which is something you put into you, and sukkah, which is something you go into?
Well, I was thinking that might create a difference. So this question from the Gemara that Rebbe discusses, and he discusses in the context of a chikira from the Rabbi Shais about shir atzmi and shir mitzdaref. Is this shir a kazayas, the size of an olive? Is it that when you have this amount, now you have something which is usher, or is it that there's this usher food, whatever it is, chazer, and it's all usher, but you have to put together enough tiny pieces of it until you have a kazayas in order for it to be considered to be considered usher.
I don't understand the difference.
All right. I think I'm mixing things up.
Okay, we'll cut this out.
Yeah, let's cut it out. It's boring anyways.
We'll go back to the cats and cucumbers before Yisrael got pulled over.
Just keep on going back to the cats and the cucumbers.
Yeah. Well, we can put in as many of those videos as we want.
But let me try this again. The question of the Rabbi Shais is, he says you can look at the measurements in Torah, whether it be a kazayas, an olive's worth, or a revius, a certain amount of a liquid measure. You can look at each one of these measurements in two different ways. Either you can see it as one thing or a collection of parts. So is an olive's worth of something an olive's worth, or is it a bunch of tiny little molecules of whatever food this is, a treif sandwich? Is this a bunch of tiny pieces that combine together? That's the question.
Sort of like, is there any such thing as half a drop?
So, yeah.
You know about this chikira?
Tell me about this chikira.
This is from our mother's old
that's right.
When she was a little girl, she used to tell our bubby, Allah Shalom, I don't want a lot of drink, I want a little bit of drink, I just want half a drop. And she used to tell her, well, if it's only half a drop, it won't drop.
Right.
So is it similar to that?
Yes, I think it might be. Yeah, I think it is similar to that. So there's a famous argument between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish about chatzi shir, whether chatzi shir is aser min haTorah, whether if you have a portion of, so if something is aser, if you eat an olive's worth of it, what if you have less than that? Is that still aser? We know that you don't get punished until. So we know you don't get punished until you have a kazayas of it, but is it still usher to eat it before then? Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish have a famous argument in Gemara about whether or not a less than a shear, what they call it chatzi shear, half a shear, but it could mean any fraction of a shear, any fraction.
It doesn't have to be 50%.
No. So I think Rabbi Yochanan says that it is aser, and Reish Lakish says that it's not. I might be wrong, but the way that Rabbi Shais sets it up is, he says they are both looking at the shiurim in two different ways. One is looking at it and saying that a kazayas of something becomes a new existence, a new thing, and that is now aser. And the other one says, no, it's always aser. Pig meat, even one tiny bit of it is aser. It's just that the punishment doesn't start applying until you put enough of those pieces together to make it significant.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So then the question becomes the minimal measurement, according to Torah. Is that the point where something becomes what it is, or is it the point where it becomes significant? Meaning even less than that amount still is what it is. It's just not significant, meaning you wouldn't be punished.
So I guess the question that I'm wondering is, so you can apply this to food. Can you, because you can take food is something that you take a chunk of it and put it inside of you, and you can take either bigger or smaller chunks. Can you say that about a makif, a sukkah, which surrounds you? Can there be a piece of a makif?
Well, I would say the whole concept of Reishe Veruba is a partial makif. You're not putting your entire self into the sukkah. You're putting part of yourself into the sukkah.
But you're the thing. The person who's shaped like a line is the thing that's
less than whole.
Less than whole. The sukkah itself is still. I mean, I guess it's not officially whole because it's only 2.5 walls, but still, it is still encompassing you or part of you.
How does this connect back to the shrink ray?
The shrink ray question is
shrink ray. You didn't say to the guy. You didn't say it was a shrink ray, did you?
I did.
Oh, okay, fine. Did you say it was a shrink ray?
Yeah, it's a shrink ray. It's important that it be a shrink ray. It's not like for various boring reasons, I have constructed this weird question in a very specific way.
Okay.
I have another weird question that if you have a time machine, it's a time portal. It's not a time machine. It's not electronic or anything. It's a time portal. And if you jump through it on Shabbos, is it still Shabbos? If you jump through the time portal into not Shabbos, is it still Shabbos for you? Anyway, so that question, it has to be a time portal. It can't be a time machine because then you can't beep, boop, boop the buttons.
Maybe it's not electrical.
No, it's just that you find a hole in your house that if you jump through it, you go one day earlier.
I'm saying even the machine. You could have a machine that's just mechanical. There's no no electricity.
Oh, so like some sort of like Jules Verne time machine.
Jules Verne time machine, yeah. That, and in fact, I believe that is that's the time machine.
Mm-hmm. All right. Do you have anything meaningful to say?
Jules Verne was ahead of his time. I would say. Wouldn't you say that Jules Verne was ahead of his time? Why are you laughing?
Because that is like it's such a. it's a pompous thing to say. Like if you're in a gathering and you want to sound smart, it's an empty, just bloated thing to say. Jules Verne was ahead of his time, wouldn't you say? Wouldn't you agree? Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So far, I don't think we've said anything, given anybody anything to put in their pocket.
I'm not familiar with that idiom. What does that mean?
I made it up just now, but it means that, like, all right, this might have been like enjoyable while you listen to it, but you walk away and you don't have anything.
You mean there's some poor guy watching this right before Shabbos, and he's waiting for the Vort, and then Shkia already, or not Shkia, 2 minutes before Shkia, and he has to turn it off, and he's sitting at the Shabbos table, and his wife's like, "Okay, Tati, would you like to share something? I saw you watching that madcap Blood Brothers. What would you like to share, pray tell?"
No white cats are afraid of cucumbers.
There's something about a shrink ray, an egg melech haboshin, and a chatzi shir.
He didn't just watch the video before Shabbos. He printed out the transcript from the YouTube automatic subtitles, and he's reading it verbatim at the Shabbos table.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine that? Some guy reading out a printed transcript of this conversation at his Shabbos table, just wondering, when is the Teichen going to come in?
Yeah, he keeps on going like this to his family.
You want to hear something about Sukkos?
I do.
Okay, I'm going to tell you something. This is from the Rebbe's father. Very simple concept. What was that?
It was a fairy that lives in my house.
So there's a prohibition in the Torah. Lay say sifu v'lay sigru. Do not add and do not subtract from the Torah, from the mitzvahs. So it's kind of obvious not to subtract. Everyone knows that you're not allowed to not do a mitzvah.
Do you think there was ever a clever kid who tried to get out of math class that way?
Oh, Torah says no adding and subtracting.
Right? And then he just walks out. Go on. Jules Verne. Jules Verne was ahead of his time, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, like sifu v'lay sigru. Do not add and do not subtract. Well, obviously, we know not to subtract. We know you're not allowed to not do a mitzvah. So actually, the Kli Yakar explains. You know the Kli Yakar?
The precious vessel?
The Kli Yakar says, what does it mean? Sifu v'lay sigru. It means do not add in order that you do not come to subtract. That when you add where you shouldn't add, you end up taking away. By the way, I'll tell you a little cute story based on that. Apparently, Abba Ibn played golf with Nixon. Abba Ibn was the ambassador, and he played golf with Nixon. And he beat Nixon. And Ben Gurion said to Abba Ibn, I saw that Nixon beat you in golf. He says, no, I beat him. He says, well, I saw that the score was whatever, I don't know. What would be a believable golf score for?
I don't know.
Well, I know that in miniature golf, if you get 5 strokes, they max you out at that, right? Is that correct?
I don't know. I am bad at every sport, including miniature golf. I don't know anything about any of this.
Okay. So anyways, let's say you said, well, Ben Gurion said to Abba Ibn, I saw that you had 118 and Nixon only had 116. So I'm sorry, no, the opposite. I saw that you had 116, Nixon had 118, so he beat you. So why do you say you won? He says, no, in golf, it's laissez sifu or laissez group. That by adding, the higher golf score is worse.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say Jules Verne was ahead of his time? Do you think Jules Verne was a golfer?
All right. So yeah. So there was So what are you telling me? Oh, don't add to Torah because then I'll subtract from Torah. So
there's a mashal from the Dubna Magid.
I know I'm not supposed to say Shema Yisrael too many times, but then sometimes I do because I forget if I said it.
I think you're not supposed to say it like double, like back to back.
Yeah.
Talking about the Mishnah and Megillah, the guy who says Shema Shema or Maidim Maidim.
Maidim you're not supposed to say.
Right. So there's a mashal from the Dubna Magid that one time this guy goes over to his neighbor and he's like, hey, could I borrow what did you borrow from him? Your silverware. So he's like, yeah, sure. So he lends it to him. And then when he returns it, he's like, oh, hold on a second. You're giving me back extra. Like I gave you 10 spoons. Now I see 20 spoons. So he's like, oh yeah, while the spoons are with me, I guess they were pregnant. They had babies. So the guy's like, Okay, well, I guess my neighbor is kind of a fool, and he thinks that spoons can get pregnant and have babies. And well, what do I care? I'm getting extra spoons. It's good silver, right? So he's like, okay, fine, no problem. All right. So he took it. Anyways, this was a long con because I don't know if he did it more than once.
I thought it was going to be just a short change con. I thought they were going to go back and forth with the spoons.
No, listen, he set him up because then he comes to him later and he's like, can I borrow your chandelier? He's like, sure, by all means, borrow my chandelier. Okay, anyways, the guy never returned it. Finally, he comes over a few days later. He says, when do you intend on returning the chandelier? He's like, oh, I'm sorry. My condolences. While the chandelier was with me, it died. So he says, a chandelier can't die. He says, well, if you believe that spoons can have babies, why can't the chandelier die?
Okay. Wow, that is a long con.
That's the mashal from the Dubna Magid, that when you add, you end up subtracting, which means basically if you can tell Hashem that I can use my own judgment to add mitzvahs, then eventually you could rationalize coming to the point where you can chas v'shalom detract and take away mitzvahs. Okay? So the whole point is that don't tamper with the mitzvahs. They're not subject to human intellect. We understand as much as we can understand, like the Rambam says. You should try to understand as much as you can understand. But ultimately, mitzvahs are beyond us, or like Chassidus often mentions, all mitzvahs are chukim. Even mishpatim are chukim. Ultimately, all mitzvahs are beyond us. So don't rationalize you're going to add, even though you think adding is a good thing, because then you think mitzvahs are subject to your understanding, and then you're going to rationalize subtracting. Okay. So far, so good?
Yes.
Okay.
But I mean, Jews have added a lot to.
That's a classic question, Reb Dovid. Yeah. So, that's the question about all of the Gzeirus, Midrabanan.
So, I mean, that one you could say that is wrapped up in a mitzvah from the Torah. But what about minhagim, things that Jews just started doing?
The Rambam actually clarifies and says that when the Rabbanim came and made different takanas, gzeirus, he gives a specific example. I believe this is the exact example, but about basa b'chalav, about milk and meat. That when they come and they say, as interpreters of the law, and the rabbis say that doesn't just mean the actual child of that mother. It means any meat and milk from that species. So that's not adding, that's them interpreting what the words mean. However, when they come along and they say, and don't even mix chicken and milk, that's them legislating by their own power, vested in them by the Torah, but then that's them that's not interpreting, that's legislating, and they have to be transparent about the fact that we're not claiming that's what Torah says. We're admitting that that's minha Torah, that biblically that's not the prohibition, but we are adding to that. And as long as they are transparent about that, then it's fine. And by the way, that's
this sounds like a good argument for citing sources.
Yes, of course you have to cite sources. I asked the guy, I don't want to say who, and I don't want to say where, and I don't want to tell you his background or anything, but I had a sense that he was struggling with this idea. And I asked him, is there a difference in the geder of chiyuv between eating matzah on the night of the Seder and eating kreplach on Hashanah Rabbah? Okay. He could not answer the question.
Is there a difference between eating matzah on Pesach, which is a mitzvah of the Torah, or eating kreplach on Hashanah Rabbah? I don't know who this person is, but I wouldn't put that on him. A lot of the information is presented that way. It's a pet peeve of mine when I see Torah presented in a way that says, this is what's true. And like, here's how, like, whatever it is, here's how the afterlife works. Here's how this works. Right. And not saying, well, according to this source and according to that source, especially because there's so many different ways of looking at things, even within Torah. Yeah.
And like our ancestor, the Megala Amukes said,
you like bringing that one up.
What?
You like name dropping that.
Yeah. Moshe is, my son is sitting here, so I'm saying for him, so I feel good. Moshe is Rosh Tevis Machlekes Shammai Hillel.
Okay.
Moshe Kibbel Torah Sinai. So Moshe, who received the Torah from Sinai, his name represents Machlekes Shammai Hillel, that inherent in Torah is the fact that there are two diametrically opposed opinions or perspectives. I don't like to use the word opinions because it makes it sound like a whim, but that the truth is more nuanced than just there's one way of looking at it.
Right. And if you just if you just present the Jewish view and it's one tiny part of it, then you're not doing justice to Torah.
Correct. But I think we discussed this at length in our pre-Shavuos Blood Brothers.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, so let's not go down that route again.
Okay.
Although we're both very interested in it. But at any rate, the idea of do not add so that you do not subtract. So the Rebbe's father says like this. There is a verse in Yeshayahu, the prophet. It says, V'sukkah tiyeh, Hashem will act as a protecting sukkah, canopy, shelter. L'machse l'mister mizerem u'mimatar, to shield and to protect the zerem and the matar. Zerem means storm. Zayin resh mem. Zerem means storm. Matar, mem tes resh, is rain. So Hashem is like a sukkah that will protect you from the storm and the rain. So here's what the Rebbe's father says. That when you realize that Hashem is a sukkah, a makif, meaning to say that as much as we can understand, we don't contain Hashem in our puny little heads. Leis machshava tfisa bey. No thought can grasp Hashem. So ultimately, we don't ever have him contained. He contains us. Our relationship with Torah is ultimately a makif, an encompassing relationship, because Torah is always going to be, literally and figuratively both, above our heads. Like when you say something went over your head, whoosh, right? And understand it. Okay, so ultimately Torah will always have around your head. There's always an infinite amount of Torah beyond us, because Torah is infinite. So whatever we're able to internalize, there's still an infinite amount that's still beyond us that goes over our head. So Torah is a sukkah. Hashem is a sukkah. So Hashem, Torah, one thing, they're over our heads. And when you realize that even though we learn Torah and we internalize it, but it's still infinitely beyond us, that will shield us. That knowledge will shield us, protect us from what? From zerem and matar, storm and rain. And what is the storm and the rain? There are ramach mitzvahs, as say 248 positive commandments, which the Rebbe's father says the 248 positive commandments basically represents all mitzvahs. I know there's also the Shasam mitzvahs, let's say 365 prohibitions, but basically there's 248 things as Jews that we do. Okay?
Okay.
Those are the things that you do. When you know that Torah and mitzvahs are fundamentally beyond us, then you'll be protected from zerem or matar. Zerem is Zayin Reish Mem 247. Matar is Mem Reish 249. If you have that awareness, then you'll stick with the 248 that are mach, and you won't go down and you won't go up.
So what is that, based on that vart then? I forgot. You don't like the word vart. Based on that nakuda, what would you say about the little guy in the sukkah? How the little shrunken man? What size sukkah should he be in?
Wow! Based on that,
yeah.
Do you think there's a connection? I mean, I guess everything inside is connected to everything else.
I mean, you didn't. It didn't go. You didn't go one step further, but it made sense to me. If you realize that, I mean, you could just interpret what you just shared with me as well. If you know that God is completely beyond you, then you won't mess with it. Like you won't mess with this with God's stuff, and you won't tamper with something that you have no.
You have no idea what you're tampering with,
right? You have no credentials. You're not certified to do this, right? Because you know that God is completely beyond you. But it seemed like they go together even more than that to me. It seems like when you know that God is not something that you can collect pieces of, that you are getting. God is something that is conceptually something that is around you, right? And once you know that, then you can't start chipping away pieces at it. You'll be protected from that.
Thing, right? That in Chassidus we say that an etzem, an essence, which is such a clumsy translation of etzem, but the best we can do, I think, till now, cannot be divided, can't be mischalik. Something that is what it is cannot be. But and then conversely, we say also that when the Baal Shem Tov said, "Shata toifis b'miktas mina etzem," that when you hold on to part of an etzem, what is part of an etzem? Well, there is no part of an etzem because what's the rest of the statement? You're holding on to all of it,
right? So then it would make sense that if you start taking away if you try to take away a part of an etzem, or you try gluing things onto an etzem, you will no longer have that etzem. That's not the thing that this is not something that can be divided. Right. So it seems like those ideas go together, like in a even more direct way.
And therefore,
that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Even for someone who was shrunken with a shrink ray,
he would still have he'd have to go inside of a big sukkah.
And the shear of a sukkah would not be smaller because he's smaller. The shear of the sukkah is the shear of the sukkah.
Yeah, that would be my argument based on this conversation.
Dovid, you are a man who is truly ahead of his time, I would say.
Thank you.
Much like H.G. Wells.
You got me. I thought you were going to say Jules Verne.
He was also ahead of his time.
What'd you say? Do you think?
But I realized that he wasn't the time machine.
Yeah, that's right. I was wondering that when you said that.
Yeah, no. What's interesting, by the way, is Jules Verne did have a thing about people getting shrunken, right?
I don't know. I haven't read any of this.
Well, you went to Disney World.
Yes, I did.
Many times.
Yes, I actually went to Disneyland Paris, which does not have a Tomorrowland. It has a Discoveryland, which is, instead of based on 1950s retrofuturism, it's based on Jules Verne type of futurism. There's a lot of copper.
Yeah, is it like steampunk?
Yeah, it's like steampunk.
So
but I've never read any of it.
In the Disney World, not the Euro Disney, but the regular Disney, they have the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, don't they?
Do they?
Don't they? I believe so. I believe 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is a ride at Disney World.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yes.
I believe I've been on it.
Mm-hmm.
You want to know something?
Yeah.
I haven't read it either. But I've been on that ride.
But you've experienced it. It's even more so. You have been surrounded by it.
I don't need
like a makif.
Like a makif. I don't need to read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I lived 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea for about 8 minutes. And I want to tell you something. It changed me.
Really?
I my life basically in two eras. Before I went on 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and after.
Are you serious? Because it's one of the most boring rides in Disney World.
Apparently, because you can't even remember that such a
It's a
ride
it's
exists.
a walkthrough, right? You just walk through the Nautilus, right?
No, you go on the submarine, and no, it's not a walkthrough. You ride on the submarine. So, would you say that the Sukkah is Judaism's theme park?
The Sukkah is
An immersive experience.
Yeah, it is an immersive experience. Every other mitzvah we have.
If you met someone who was a fan of Judaism, but had been admiring Judaism as an observer, you might say to them,
Have you ever been inside a Sukkah?
And experience it as an immersive experience.
Yeah, I do think that. Because I think everything else is like, all the other mitzvahs are things you can hold.
Yeah. Including the lulav and esrog.
Yeah. A talus isn't Disneyland for me, though. Sukkah's fun.
Now, you mentioned the talus because it's also a makif.
Yeah.
Would you consider a talus an immersive experience?
Talus is Knott's Berry Farm.
Uh-huh.
If a sukkah is Disney World, then I would say a talus is Knott's Berry Farm.
Okay. All right. I hear that. Okay. Wow.
Is there anything usable in this?
The cats and the cucumbers are definitely usable. That was a winner. And I think, we've got tremendous material here.
Okay, good.
Fantastic. All right. Anything else?
No, that's all. That's all I have.
I feel like this has been an immersive experience.
Yeah, do you? Well, you have been encompassed by your vehicle the entire time.
The safest place to be during... I can't remember if it's a true thing or a sci-fi thing.
Okay. Whatever you say, I feel like it's going to endanger somebody's life at some point. But
okay, no, you're right, because somebody's going to...
If you start the safest place to be...
Yeah.
No, I can't remember.
Dispensing safety tips, right.
Can't remember.
Yeah.
But, I think it's on top of a metal shed in a thunderstorm. During a lightning storm.
Right.
I can't remember if that...
wrong, and I'll Google it later and get back to you.
Would you say Benjamin Franklin was ahead of his time?
Benjamin Franklin invented the library. And he wanted... Yeah. And he also invented the library fine.
Okay.
Yes. Which was $100, which is why Benjamin Franklin is on the $100 bill.
He invented $100?
Yes.
Before that, everyone was like, this costs $99. I don't know what to do if you want more of it.
Right. I could give you 99 twice.
Like, I have a thing. I have a bag of grain. It costs $99.
Yep.
If you want any more than this, I don't know what to do.
Right. You're going to have to
go walk out and come back in. I'll give you a smaller bag in addition, and you'll pay for that.
That's right. And that was written in Poor Richard's Almanac. You can look that up.
What's written?
Poor Richard's Almanac. That was
yes, it's his book. But what's written in there? Hey, let's have a $100 bill.
Let's have he didn't write it like that, but however he wrote it in his language, in the language of his time.
Okay. Did he recommend that? Did he believe that the recommended fine for an overdue book should be $100?
course, yeah. That's why he recommended it.
Wait, they all do go together? He invented the library, invented the fine, and he said that the fine for the book should be $100.
Well, the original punishment was you have to stand at the top of a metal shed in a lightning storm with a key attached to a kite.
I don't know anymore what part of this is this thing that you actually told me that's a fact, and what part of it is layers upon layers of jokes.
Are there any other makifim that you would like to talk about?
No, that's it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you,
Thank
blood
you.
brother.
Thank you, blood brother.